Here's another problem demonstrating how to calculate the shortcut formula for sum of squares. And this data is the same data we use to calculate the sum of squares, variance, and standard deviation the long way. So this was problem 2. So our data here is 7, 6, 3, 4, and 50. And we've got it summarized here below. We've got the sum and the mean. So the formula for the shortcut formula for sum of squares is sum of squares equals the sum of the y squareds minus the sum of the y squared divided by n. So for this first piece, to calculate the sum of the y squareds, we are going to take each one of these y's, square them, and add them up. All right, so we've got 7 squared plus 6 squared plus 3 squared plus 4 squared plus 50 squared. All right, so that is the first piece of this problem. We're taking each one of these y's, squaring them, and adding them up. All right, then for the second piece, I'm going to change a color here. For the second piece of this problem, we are going to subtract the sum of the y's, which we already calculated here. It's 70, right? The sum of the y's is 70. We're going to take the sum of the y's, square that, and divide just the sum of the y's by n, which is 5. All right, so the first part of the problem, again, we're taking all those y's, adding them up, taking all those y's, squaring them, then adding them up. And for the second part of the problem, we're adding up the y's first, then squaring it and dividing by n. All right, so when you do all this, I'll just bring this back to black ink. When you do all this, the 7 squared plus 6 squared plus 3 squared plus 4 squared plus 50 squared, that equals, I did this ahead of time, that equals 2610. And then we're going to subtract 70 squared divided by 5. So that's 4,900 divided by 5, which is 980. And 2610 divided by 980 is 1630, which if you go back and look at when we calculated the variance, when we calculated the sum of squares, using this data the long way, we got the same number for our sum of squares. Now again, if I was asking you to do a brand new problem from scratch using the shortcut formula and get all the way through to variance and standard deviation, I might still expect you to calculate the variance, which remember variance is the sum of squares divided by degrees of freedom, which is the sum of squares divided by n minus 1, which in this problem is 1630 divided by 5 minus 1, which equals, I should have this written down, 407.5. Which again, it's the same as we got, let me go back and make that a little neater. 407.5, which is the same thing we got when we did it the long way. And then again, if I asked you to calculate standard deviation, that's the square root of the variance, which is the square root of 407.5, which is 20.19. Which again is the same number that we got when we did it the long way. All right, so I'm going to do one more problem for you guys, shortcut formula from start to finish on a new set of data, just so you can see what this looks like using the shortcut formula from scratch.